Zyra had seen many strange things in her life as a scout of the Velari Dominion. Storms that crackle with living lightning, oceans that sang at night, cities carved into bones of extinct leviathans. But nothing prepared her for the sight before her now. The human was crouched by a fire in the twilight clearing, his crude knife scraping against blackened scales, his hands stained with thick, oily blood. Behind him lay the enormous carcass of the apex of their world, the Droveth beast, a creature so feared that Velari children were told bedtime warnings of hunger. Entire hunting parties had vanished when they tried to bring one down. Their armored hides repelled plasma bolts, their fangs could shear through alloy, and their instincts made them nearly impossible to ambush. And yet, here was a single human, roasting its meat like it was nothing more than a forest hare. Zyra's frills flared in alarm, her body pressing instinctively against the nearest tree. You slew it?" The man turned, his dark eyes reflecting the firelight, his lips pulled into what humans called a smile, though Zyra always thought it looked more like the baring of a predator's teeth. "Yeah," he said casually, as though explaining he had plucked a fruit. "Got lucky with the spear throw. Thing's got a soft patch under the jaw. Once you hit that, it's just a matter of hanging on till it bleeds out." Zyra couldn't breathe. She had studied the Droveth her entire life. Weak points, migration patterns, tales of survivors who bore scars instead of lives. None of it suggested that even a strike to the throat would be enough. The beast's hide was proof against most known weaponry. Yet this human spoke as though it were a simple quarry. "You ate it?" she whispered, her voice quivering. He chuckled, turning a sizzling strip of meat over the flames. "Not yet. Just cooking it. Figure I'd better make the most of the kill. Smells pretty good, doesn't it?" The scent hit her then, sharp and heavy, oily smoke carrying hints of iron and something foreign. The idea of consuming predator flesh was sacrilege in Velari culture. It was said the mind of the beast lingered, corrupting those who devoured it. No Velari would dare taste the flesh of the apex. And yet, her stomach churned with something she refused to name. Was it disgust or hunger? Hashtag the alien fear. She crept closer, unable to tear her eyes away. The carcass loomed behind him, easily 3 times the size. Its maw hung open, serrated fangs catching the dim starlight. Its scales, once a glimmering midnight blue, were dulled and cracked where his spear had pierced. The beast looked smaller in death, diminished, and yet Zyra could feel the primal weight of what it had been. "You are reckless, human," she said finally. "You do not understand what you've done. The Droveth is not food. It is a force of the wild. To kill one is to court a curse." The man shrugged, tearing a strip of cooked flesh with his knife and blowing on it before biting in. His jaw worked slowly, thoughtfully. Then he swallowed, licking his lips. "Curse tastes like tough steak," he said. Zyra recoiled, her frills stiff with shock. The casual dismissal of something that had terrified her people for generations was impossible. "Why?" she demanded, her voice trembling. "Why would you do this?" He looked at her, then at the fire. His expression softened. "Because it was hunting me. And if something's hunting me, I hunt it back. That's the way my people learn to live." Hashtag the human way. He leaned on his knees, gazing into the flames. "Where I'm from, the animals that ruled the land weren't gentle either. Saber-toothed cats, dire wolves, crocodiles longer than ships. We didn't outrun them, couldn't outfight them head-on. So we learned their patterns, watched their mistakes, figured out what made them bleed. And when we killed them, we ate them. Waste not, want not." His words were simple, but they carried a weight that unsettled Zyra. The Velari avoided predators, gave them respect and distance, built their lives around not becoming prey. But humans seemed to stare predators in the eye and say, "You will not define me." "You are insane," she whispered. "Probably," he said with another toothy grin, "but it's kept me alive this long." Hashtag the taste of fear. Against her better judgment, Zyra stayed near the fire. The human carved another piece of meat, tossing it onto the flames. The fat sizzled, spitting sparks into the night air. "You want to try?" he asked suddenly. Her frills clamped tight to her skull. "No, I would never." "Suit yourself." He chewed loudly, deliberately, as though to prove his point. The longer she sat there, the more the scent burrowed into her senses. It was foul, yes, but also rich. Her stomach growled before she could stop it. The human raised a brow, smirking. "You sure about that?" Zyra turned away sharply. "I do not crave the flesh of monsters." But her body betrayed her. Hunger gnawed at her insides. She hadn't eaten in 2 days, not since her supply packs were lost in the storm. The forest offered little else, most of its creatures poisonous to her species. The Droveth, though forbidden, was at least edible. She knew this from the old records. Edible but cursed. The human saw her hesitation. He didn't push, merely set a strip of roasted meat on a flat stone between them, and went back to eating. It sat there, steaming, smelling of fire and iron. Zyra's throat tightened. Hashtag crossing the line. Minutes passed. She stared at the offering as if it were a coiled serpent ready to strike. Her mind screamed of taboo, of corruption, of the voices of her ancestors condemning her. But her body won. With trembling claws, she reached out and took the strip. The human watched without a word. Zyra sniffed at first, gagged, then forced herself to bite. The taste was overwhelming, dense, bitter, alien. She chewed, gagged again, but swallowed. Fire spread in her belly, not of pain but of raw vitality. She gasped. It burns, she said. The human grinned. That's called protein. Fills you up, makes you strong. She stared at the corpse behind him again, then at the meat in her hand. A lifetime of fear shattered in that instant. The apex was dead. Its flesh was hers. The curse hadn't struck. Instead, she felt alive. Hashtag a new truth. Later, as the fire burned low, Zyra found herself speaking words she had never imagined. You've undone centuries of belief, she whispered. All my life, I thought the Droveth untouchable. But you made it food. He shrugged. Things are only untouchable until someone touches them. She studied him, this strange, reckless human who faced nightmares without hesitation. Something stirred in her chest. Not fear this time, but something closer to awe. Perhaps the Velari had lived too long in reverence of monsters. Perhaps survival meant more than hiding. Perhaps, she thought, there was power in looking at the impossible and biting into it. The human tossed her another strip of meat. This time, she caught it without hesitation. Hashtag epilogue. By dawn, the carcass of the Droveth was nothing but bones and scorched hide. Zyra stood beside the human, belly full, blood warm, and felt a strange exhilaration. For the first time, the forest around her did not feel like a place of shadows and hungry eyes. It felt like a place she could conquer. She glanced at the human, who was packing his knife. He caught her gaze and smiled. What? He asked. She tilted her head, frills flickering with something between fear and admiration. I think, she said softly, that your kind was not meant to survive here, but to change everything that calls this world untouchable. He only laughed, shouldering his pack. Guess that makes dinner our first step. And Zyra, still tasting the predator's flesh on her tongue, could not deny it.